All right, so we're going to take a look at the project we'll be building in this section. It's called News Grid, and it's basically a UI for a news website. And it's going to be pretty simple in terms of the number of pages. We're just going to have a home, about, and then we have a single article page, which we'll take a look at. And obviously, we'll be using the grid system here. And I'm just going to go through this real quick. So we have a nav bar that's sticky, so it sticks to the top wherever we go. And this logo here is just something that I created in Photoshop. Well, I took an icon, added some color to it, added some text, and I might add on a bonus video showing you how to do something like that in Photoshop. I also created a light version down here to be placed on dark backgrounds. So we have the nav bar, we have some font awesome social media icons here, we have our links, and then we have this showcase area, which would be like a featured article. And we're using an overlay. We're going to use the before pseudo selector as we looked at in a past video. We're using the grid to kind of push all this over to the side. And then, of course, down here, we're using grid CSS. And this one, for instance, is going to span over a column. This one spans over. We're going to have different utility classes for different background colors. We'll be using CSS variables. All the images you see here, you'll have in a folder called image resources in this lecture. And then the footer, we're using the grid as well. We have these 4 different sections, and then this one that spans all the way across, just the copyright. And then the about page is very simple. We just have a main area, and then we have our sidebar. We're using the grid here. And the article page is similar. We have the main article with an image, some meta info like the author, the date, the category, and then on the side we have the categories links, which don't go anywhere, and then this join our club little widget here. So any other grid items we add here would get placed on the sidebar. So it's very efficient or scalable if you want to add more content. All right, now let's take a look at the responsive version. So I'm going to open up my dev tools. And let's take a look. This is Landscape iPhone X. So as you can see, it looks pretty good. Let's turn this around in portrait mode. And everything is stacked on top of each other nice and neatly. If you look at the About page, same thing. Let's take a look at an iPad. Okay, so on the iPad, I just kept the inner pages having the 2 columns here. On the home page, I changed this grid to be in 2 columns rather than stacked, because I think that on an iPad it's too wide to have just one per row or just one column. So we have 2 here, and if I take it out of this mode, and you'll see that as I bring the browser down, when I hit 768, it's going to go into 2. And then when I hit 600, it goes into 1. Okay, so it's very responsive, and I think that you're going to learn a lot in this project. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, guys, so we're going to start on our project. We're going to create our files and add the HTML for at least the nav bar and hopefully style it in this video. We're also going to add the favicon to the tab. So in the previous lecture, you should have a zip file called image resources. And what you're going to want to do is create a folder. I called mine News Grid. I created an IMG folder, and I put all of the images in here. Okay, so as far as images, we have the logo.png, which is the main logo. We have a logo light PNG for the footer. I also include the PSD, which is the Photoshop file in case you guys wanted that. And then there's an icon.png, which is just the icon, and we're going to use this to create a favicon. And then we have the showcase or featured.jpg, which is the featured article in the showcase area, and then a folder called articles with all the other images. So once you get those, let's go ahead and let's create our files. So we're going to create index.html. We're going to have an about.html. And we're going to have an article.html, which will represent a single article. And then let's create a folder called CSS. Inside CSS, we'll have a style.css, and we'll have a mobile.css. Okay, and we can close all of this except for index.html, and let's open up style CSS. Okay, so let's add in our boilerplate here, and for the title I'm just going to say News Grid, and let's say latest news. Okay, and let's link our style sheets. So we'll say link, and let's do CSS/style CSS, and then under that we want our mobile CSS. So I'll copy that down. Let's change this to mobile CSS. However, we only want this to show if the screen is 768 or less. So we're going to add a media attribute and say screen and max width 768 pixels. Okay, now we're also using Font Awesome, so let's head over to fontawesome.com and let's say start using free, and then we're going to grab this link and put it right above the style.css. All right, so let's take care of the favicon. Now, what I usually do is I use a service called Dynamic Drive. I've used this literally for about 8 or 9 years. So if you search for Dynamic Drive favicon, you'll get this link here. It's actually tools.dynamic.drive.com/favicon. And what happens here is you can upload an image. So we're going to grab the icon.png and then click Create Icon, and it will generate a favicon.iso file or ICO file. So we want to download that, and let's go ahead and grab that. I already have one here, but I'm going to grab that and copy it, and then let's bring it over to our root folder. Okay, don't put it in the image folder, put it in the root. So we'll paste that in, good. And then all we have to do is add this little snippet here, this link to the favicon, and we'll place that right here. And I'm just going to remove the slash because it will give us some issues if we just open it with the file system. It won't display. So let's remove that. And that's it. Let's save. Let's open with Live Server. And if you don't see the favicon here, you need to just clear your cache. Well, at least I do because I've already done this. So I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to do Command-Shift-R, and it will reload. If you're on Windows, I believe it's Shift-F5. And now you can see the favicon displays in the tab. Okay, so it's as easy as that. So now let's start to add some markup. First thing is the nav bar. So we're going to have a nav with the ID of main nav. And let's put a container in here to contain everything to the max width that we're going to set. And then we're going to have our logo, so image with the class of logo. It's going to go to image/logo.png. And for the alt, I'll just say news grid. And then under that, we want our social media icons. And this is going to be a grid. I'm going to set this to grid. Normally, I'd probably use Flex for this, but I really want to focus on the grid system here. So each one of these will be grid items. All right, so let's create, actually, let's give this div a class of social, and then we're going to have a link with, we'll do a link, and we'll just set this to go to Facebook. Obviously, this would be their Facebook page, but this is a fictional website. And then inside here, we want to put we'll put an I tag with the class of FA, and it's actually going to be FAB. The social media icons have a class of FAB instead of FAS. And then this will be FA-Facebook, like that. Okay, and we're going to also add a class of FA-2X, which will make it larger. And then since this is an external website, let's add target equals underscore blank, which will open it in a new tab. All right, so let's take this and let's copy this down 3 more times. And we're going to do Twitter. Let's change this to Twitter, the icon. And then this, I'm going to do a Command Control D so that I can choose the next iteration of Facebook. And I'm going to change this to Instagram. And then I'll select this one, Control D, and then let's do YouTube. All right, so if I save this, we should see this, okay? And don't worry, we'll make this look better. The last thing we need in this container is going to be our links, or our list with the links. So let's do a UL, LI, let's say I'm actually going to give this a class of current, because I want the current page to be highlighted. So let's say class current. It's going to go to index.html, and let's say home. Okay, we'll copy this down, and let's say about. Change this to about.html, and let's clear this class. Alright, so it's going to look absolutely horrible for now. In the next video, we're going to start to add some of our core styles, and then we'll style the navbar. Alright, so in the last video, we created our core HTML, our head tags and all that, our favicon, linked our style sheets, created the HTML for the navbar. Now we're going to add our base styles, and we're going to style our navbar. So let's go to Style CSS, and we're going to use some variables in this project. So on the root scope, I'm going to create some variables, mostly for colors. And this makes it really easy if you wanted to switch up the color schemes. So let's add one called primary color, and I'm going to set this to a dark red. So basically, if we look at the project, this color here that you see, this button, this right here, this is going to be the primary color, and then this orange color that sports has, that this button has, is going to be the secondary, and then we're also going to have a light color and a dark color. Okay, so this will be the dark, and then the background here, this is going to be the light. So the red is going to be hexadecimal C72727. Okay, then we're going to do secondary color, and that's going to be hexadecimal F99500. Okay, let's do light color, and that's going to be F3 three times, and then dark color is going to be 333. All right, I'm also going to set the max width of the layout here. So let's say max width, and we'll do 1100 pixels. Okay. Now the the categories like sports, entertainment, technology, these all, as you can see, have their own colors as well. Now these are going to have a class called category. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a scope of the class of category, and I'm going to put those variables in here. So let's do sports-color. And sports color is actually going to be the same as the secondary color. So we'll put that in there. And then let's do ENT, so entertainment color, which is going to be like a purplish color. So it's going to be hexadecimal A66BBE. And then let's do tech for technology color, and we'll set that to 009CFF. Okay, so that gets our variables out of the way. We can now use those. So let's move on to our core styling. Now, as far as fonts, we're using the Lato font for the standard text, all the paragraphs and stuff. But for the headings, I'm using a font called Statliches. So we're going to get these from Google Fonts. So let's go to fonts.google.com, and let's see, let's search for LATO, so Lato. We're going to click the plus button, and we're also going to search for what is it? It's actually STAAT right here, Statliches, I don't know how to pronounce it, but we're going to add that as well. And then if we click on this down here, we're going to grab this link. This will include both fonts, and we're going to put that in our HTML. Let's put it right above our style.css. Okay, so now in our style sheet, I'm going to first add a reset. So we're going to say for everything we want to set the margin and padding to 0. Let's also set our box sizing to border box. Okay, and then in the body, we're going to add our font family. So our base font family is going to be Lato, and then we just want sans serif like that. Okay, and then let's see, for the line height, I'm going to make it kind of big. Let's do 1.5, and then the background is going to be our light color. So let's take our variable of light color. So if we save that, take a look. Now you can see the background has changed, the font has changed. Now for the links, I want all links to have a base color of 333, and I want to remove the underline, so text decoration none. Okay, and then next we're going to, actually, you know what, let me just make this smaller. Next I'm going to do the unordered lists. So for all unordered lists, I'm going to remove the bullet points, so list style none. And for any image, I want it to be 100% of its container, because by default images will just stretch beyond their containers, but if we put a width of 100%, that will stop it. Or it'll make them bigger if their container is bigger like this is, but that we'll fix that in a few minutes. Now the headings, I actually want to have that other font, so let's do H1, H3, H4, H5, and H6, and let's set that font family, and we're going to set this to STAATLICHES. That's the font we want, and this is we're going to say cursive here instead of sans serif. And then let's see, I'm going to add a margin bottom to all of our headings of, let's do 0.55 rem. And then I'm going to set a line height. I want to lessen the line height a little bit for headings, so I'm going to do 1.3. Okay, so let's see. Let's add our container utility class. So I'm going to put a comment, say utility, because we're going to be using the container in the nav, so we might as well get this out of the way. So container, we want to set a max width, and remember we set the variable up above for max width. So we're going to put that in. We want to margin auto, push it to the middle. Let's add padding on the left and right. So we'll do 2 rem left and right, and let's do overflow hidden so that it always shows the content within. And we'll save that. Now we can work on the navigation. So remember, it has an ID of main nav. So let's say main dash nav. For the nav bar itself, we're going to have a white background. Okay, save that. That turns white. We're going to position it sticky because we want it to stick to the top. So we have to put a top value of 0. Okay, now I always want it to be on top, so I'm going to add a z-index of 2. And you'll see why later on. So let's save that. Not much change. Now we want the nav to be a grid. However, if we put display grid on the main nav itself, it's just going to put the container as the one grid item. So let's make the container the actual grid item. So, or I'm sorry, the grid container. So let's say main dash nav container, and let's set that to display grid. So what this will do is it'll make the logo, the social icons, and the UL here all grid items. So let's figure out how we want those laid out. So we'll use grid dash template dash columns, and for the first one, which is the logo, let's do 6 FR. Second, let's do 3 FR. And let's do 2 FR. So I'm going to save that, and it's going to align things like that. And then let's just add a padding of 1 rem here. And then let's align everything, align items to the center. Okay, so we'll save that so it aligns them all to the center vertically. So now the logo is way too big, so let's make that smaller. We'll say main nav dot logo. Let's set that width to 180. Okay, so that looks good. the links here, obviously we want these to go this way. So I'm actually going to use flex here. I don't want to use grid for just these list items. So let's add main nav UL, and let's align it first. So I want it to go all the way over to the end. So we can use justify self end, and that'll push it all the way over. So I want to display flex, and if I do that, automatically the links will go into a flex row. Okay, and then for the links themselves, for the A tags, let's do those. We'll say main nav UL LIA, and let's add padding. We'll do 0.75 rem. Okay, so that'll give them some padding, and let's make them bold as well. We'll say font weight bold. All right, and then for the current, remember the current we want to add a background to. So let's say main dash nav UL LI A dot current, and we're going to add a background, and we're going to use the primary color. And there we go. Let's also change the color to white. Okay. And then for the hover, I want to give it the light color. So let's just copy this and say hover, and let's do a background, and let's use the light color. All right, so now when I hover, you see that we get the light color. But we want to change the text. We want to make sure the text is dark. So let's do color, or we could use the dark color here. We could do that. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so the social icons are kind of squished together. I also want to change the color of those. So let's say main nav dot social. I want to justify self. I want to put them in the middle. So let's say justify dash self. Because remember, when we're aligning the actual item itself, we use self. If we're using the parent, we can use like justify content, align items, and so on. But we're going to say justify self center. Okay, and then for each icon, we want to change the color. So let's do main nav social and then the I, and change the color to a gray. We're going to do 777. All right, and then let's just add a margin right of 0.5 rem. Kind of spread them out a little bit. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. So in the next video, we're going to start to work on the showcase. We're going to add the background image, the overlay, use the grid to align the text, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so in the last video, we created our core styles with our variables, with the primary color, secondary color, and so on. We also did the nav bar, so now we're going to move on to the showcase. So let's head back over to the HTML. Let's go under the nav here, and let's add our showcase. Okay, so we're going to use a header here with the ID of showcase. Now, I want to put everything into the middle here, so we're going to use a container, but I don't want to use the actual container here for the grid container. So I'm going to create another class called showcase-container. And inside here, we're going to just have one grid item. Okay, so I'm going to use the grids to just align it over to the side like this. So, which I probably would normally use flex for, but I just, like I said in the last video, I want to keep this focused on the grid, so we're going to do that. So we're going to have one grid item, and we're going to call this showcase dash content. And inside here, we're going to have the category. So this right here, this little sports. So that's going to have a class of category. And we're also going to have to, basically category is the core styling, like the padding, the border radius, but then the color is dependent on the category. So we're going to have a class called category sports. And then in here, we'll just say sports. Okay, and underneath the category, let's put the title. So this is going to be an H1, and let's just say some sports article, and then a paragraph, and I think I did lorem 20. Seems about right. And then underneath the paragraph, we want a link, and we're going to give this a class of BTN, which will be the core button class, and then BTN primary, which will be the primary color. So we'll have to set those up. And we'll just have this go to article.html. All right, so that's the, oh, we got to put the text in here. Let's put read more. Okay, so that's the markup. Now let's add the CSS. So we'll go to style, and let's go right here and say showcase. So the showcase itself, let's do color white. Okay, it's going to have the image background, but the background we're going to put on the before pseudo selector. If you remember when we did the lecture on after and before, I showed you how to add a background image with an overlay using the before selector. So for the actual showcase, I want the background to be dark. So let's use 333. And we're going to just add padding of 2 rem all around. And let's do position relative. And that's important because the before pseudo selector is going to be position absolute. And remember, if you position something absolute, it is positioned inside of the first relative container. So that we want that to be our showcase. So let's save that, and let's go right below and let's add showcase, and we're going to do before. Okay, now when you use before and after, you want to put in the content, and we're not actually inserting content, so we're just going to leave this blank. And then we want to add our background image here. So let's say background URL .. We want to go outside of the CSS into image, and then we want featured, and we're going to do no repeat center / cover. All right, that's not going to show just yet. Let's position this absolute, because we're basically laying this on top of the showcase. Okay, so position absolute, start at the top 0 and the left 0, and then we want the width to go all the way across. We want the height to go all the way, so 100%. And we also want to make it translucent or transparent, so let's add an opacity of, let's say, 0.4 and save. All right, so now you can see the image has an overlay, or it's not really an overlay on the image. It's basically the image, you can see through it to the dark, is basically what's happening. You can also see through the text right now, but we'll fix that in a little bit. So let's grab on to the showcase container. So we'll say showcase and the class of showcase container, and we want to display as a grid, and then the grid template columns, I want it to take up half the space basically, so we're going to just repeat 2 times 1 FR. Okay, we want it to be a 2-column grid. Even though we only have 1 item, that's fine. It should still make room for just an empty item basically. And then after that, let's justify content to the center. So this will center it horizontally, and then we want to center it vertically as well. So align items center, and then let's make the height of the showcase half the viewport, so 50 VH, and we'll go ahead and save that, and there we go. Actually, you know what? I wanted some more text than that. Let's do, for the paragraph, let's do lorem 40. See, yeah, it's a little too much. I think 30 is what I did. There we go. Okay, so notice that the text here, you can see through it. So basically the image is on top of the text. And remember, z-index takes care of what displays first and basically the order of what is on top of what. So let's take the showcase and take the, not the showcase container, we want the showcase content, which wraps all the text. And let's set the z-index to 1. And save, and now you can see that it becomes clear, and it's now on top of the image. Okay, let's see. So I mean, that's pretty much it for the core showcase styles, but we do want to add the category. We need some styling for that, as well as the button, which you can't even see. But those are going to be utility classes that we can apply in other places as well. So let's go up here to where we have our utilities. And let's do the category. So we'll say category. Okay, so for category, I'm going to display as an inline block. And let's make the color white. I'm not going to do the background is dependent on the category, so we're not going to do that here. But let's change the font size. I actually want to make it smaller, so we'll do 0.55 rem units. And I want it to be uppercase, so let's say text transform to uppercase. And as far as padding goes, we'll do 0.4 rem. So that's the top and bottom, and 0.6 rem on the left and right. All right, and then for the border dash radius, let's do 15 pixels, make it rounded, and then add a margin, or a margin bottom rather, of, we'll do a half a rem. So we'll save that. Okay, now notice it doesn't have a color around it, so what we're going to do is add our special category colors. So let's do category sports. And I'll just do one line since it's just one property. So background is going to be var what do we call it? Let's see. Oh, sports color. So we'll do dash dash sports color and save, and there we go. So while we're at it though, we might as well add the other categories. So we also have ENT for entertainment, and we have tech, and we'll change this to ENT and tech. Okay, so now when we add our other categories, the style should be set. Now the button, we want to do that next. So let's say BTN. So we'll have BTN, and then we'll have special BTN for the colors as well, special classes for the colors. So for the core button, let's display as an inline block. Whoops, what do I do here? So inline dash block. And then we want to take away the border just in case we use this on an actual button. So we'll say border none. And then the background, just by default, I'm going to use the dark color. So we'll say var dash dash dark, just in case you do BTN without another special class for the color. So we'll do that, and then let's do color white by default. And our padding, which will be 0.5 rem, top and bottom, 1.5 left and right. So we'll save that. Let's see. I actually want to push that down a little bit. So where our showcase is, let's grab the paragraph that's in the showcase content, and let's add margin bottom 1 rem. just to move that down a little bit. All right, so back to the buttons. We have the core button style, but we need to do BTN. We're going to have a BTN light. I'm just going to do all the colors now so we don't have to worry about it, which actually I'll just put this on the same line like this. So background is going to be the variable of light color. All right, and then I'm going to copy this down. Let's see, we have light, dark. Well, actually, we don't need dark because it's dark by default, so we'll just do primary and secondary. Okay, so primary, this will be our primary color, and then secondary. All right, so let's save that, and now you can see we have our red button. Now for the hover, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have one hover, and I'm just going to add the opacity of 0.9. That way, it doesn't matter what color it is, it'll still have an effect when you hover over it. And it doesn't, you know, even if it's dark or light, it's just going to change the opacity just to give it a little bit of an effect of darkening. But really, it's just we're changing the opacity. We're making it a little bit transparent. And then I want to have one more class for the button that will make it into a block level button, meaning it goes all the way across. So we're actually going to do button or btn-block, where we set it to display block instead of inline block, and we set the width to 100%, and I want to align to the middle. So text align center. Okay, so now our buttons should be all set. All right, we're going to have quite a few utility classes in this project, which is nice because you can easily change things up if you want to change the background of something. It's easy to do. All right, so that's it. I will see you in the next video where we'll start to create this grid right here with all of the articles. All right, guys, so in this video, we're going to start to work on the articles down below, basically our grid of articles. And there's quite a bit of HTML here, quite a bit of markup. I'm actually going to just make this a little bigger so that you guys can read it better. So under the header, let's say home articles, and we're going to give, this is going to be a section. So we're going to use the HTML5 section tag, and we're going to give it an ID of home-articles. And we're also going to create padding classes. So I'm going to give it a class of py-2 just to give it some padding on the top and bottom. And the way that these are going to be set up is they're going to be a little different. So for instance, this first one, we're actually going to make this a grid within a grid so that we can align it this way. And then some of these will be adding a background color to. Some of them will have an image on the top, some on the bottom. So they'll be formatted a little bit differently. So let's create the first one, which is this one here, which again is going to be a grid within a grid. So let's put our heading first. We're going to say editors picks or editor picks. And then what I want to do is create a container for our grid. So we're going to call this one, let's call it articles, or yeah, articles, excuse me, articles container. And then each one is going to be an article tag, and I'm going to give it a class of card. So card is something you see often in frameworks like Bootstrap, where you have maybe a background like this and some padding, just something to put your content into rather than just having the text and images just floating there with just the background. Sometimes you'll have like a colored heading, like maybe a background with a heading, something like that. But yeah, those are going to be cards. So each one of these articles will have a class of card. And we're going to put our first image in, which is going to be in img/articles, and it's going to be ent1. So this is an entertainment article. And this right here, this is going to be a grid container, and then this will be one grid item, and then we'll have a div that will have the rest of the stuff inside of it. So for instance, the category, which is going to have a class of category-ent, We'll say entertainment, and underneath that we're going to have our H3, our title, which is going to be a link, and it's going to go to article.html. We'll just say lorem 5 for the article, or for the title rather. And then under the H3 we're going to put a paragraph, and we'll say lorem 20. I think, is it 20? Yeah, it looks like 20. So that's going to be our first one, and if I save it and we take a look, the image is going to be giant because the images have a width of 100%. Now, one thing I forgot is the main container. You see how this is up against the edge like this because we didn't add the container class. So right under the section, I'm going to have a class of container that's going to wrap around everything. So we just want to take all this and cut that out and put that inside the container and save, and now you can see that there's some padding on the edge here, and it'll also align it to the middle. Okay, so let's add our next article. I'm just going to copy this. Now this one is not going to be its own grid, so we're talking about this right here. So we don't need to have this extra div, so we're going to take that out. We're not even going to have an image. We can take that out, and that should be good. Let's move this back a little bit, and the category is sports, so we're going to change this to sports and change this to sports, and we'll leave the title and the paragraph. Alright, so if we take a look, we should have something like this. The next one is going to be similar to what we just did, only it's going to have an image up top. So let's copy the one we just did and paste that in. And let me just fix this. So this one's going to have an image right above the category. So let's say image, and it's going to be img slash articles slash, and it's, what is it, technology, so we want tech1.jpg, and we'll change this to tech and this to technology. Okay, we'll save that. Let's make sure the image shows up, and then we have the content under it. So the next one is similar, except the image is at the bottom, so I'll just copy what we just did and let's paste that in. And we're just going to take, the image is actually going to be, let's see, what is this? This is sports, so this is going to be sports1.jpg, but we're going to move this to the bottom of the article. So right under the paragraph. And we'll change the category. Change this right here. Good. And then the next one is this one here, which is basically the same thing as this, just a different image. So we'll go ahead and copy that one with the tech1 image and paste that in, and we'll change this to tech2. Okay, next one is going to be this, which doesn't have an image or anything like that. So I'll copy the one that we did with no image, which is the second one. So this is the first one, this is the second one, and we'll put that right here. Okay, but this is going to be, it is sports, so we can actually leave that. And then this last one is similar to the first one in that it's going to be a grid within a grid. So let's copy the first one. I know this is a lot of markup, and hopefully it's not too confusing. If you want, you can just get the finished files from the first lecture of this section, and you can just copy this whole thing. I probably should have said that before. But yeah, this is going to be ENT2, only I want to take the image and put it after the div. So put the image right here. Alright, so we'll save that, and if we take a look, it's going to look pretty bad. It's just all, all in one line because we haven't added the grid yet. So let's jump into Style CSS and let's start to add our grid. Actually, first thing I'm going to do is add the utility classes, like the card class. So let's see, we'll go right below the buttons and say card. I'm going to give this a background of white, and let's do a padding of 1 rem. So if we save that, now you can see that each one of these articles, they're all wrapped in the white container or white card. So I think, yeah, we'll leave that for now, and then we'll go back down and let's style our home articles. Okay, so we have an ID of home-articles, and remember we have a class in there called articles-container, and that's what we want to set the grid on. That's going to be the grid parent. Okay, and then as far as the template columns, we're going to say grid template columns, and we're going to set repeat, and we want 3 1FR. So if I save that, automatically they're going to set to 3 in a row. Now I want some spacing in between, so let's add a grid gap of 1 rem. And whoops, yeah, there we go. Okay, so now we have some spacing, and I mean that's not too bad itself. But what I do want to do is, like I said, turn this one into its own grid and then span it over one. Okay, so just to give it, you know, a little bit of style. So we can grab onto this without giving it a special class by using first child. Okay, same with the last. We want this to do the same thing. So what I'll do is I'll go down and I'll say home-articles container. Now I want the first article, right? So I could say article first dash child. I could do that, but what if I wanted to change it to a div or something? I think I'm going to make this a little more flexible, and I'm going to use an asterisk here, meaning any element. Okay, it doesn't have to be an article, but I only want the direct child, so I'm going to use the greater than. Okay, so we're just saying anything, whatever this is, even if this was changed to a div, we're still going to target this first element here and only this first one. So let's add display grid to this, and we're going to add grid dash template columns, and we just want to repeat. Oops, we want to repeat to 1FR. So we want basically the image is going to be in 1FR, and then the text, the div with the text will be in 1FR. And let's just add a grid dash gap, and let's say 1 rem, and save that. All right, so what we've done here is we've turned this item, the first child, into a grid, and we've set it to repeat to 1FR with some grid gap. Now, obviously, this doesn't look very good. What we need to do is span this across. Okay, we want it to take up 2 columns. So what I can do is, let's see, yeah, we'll just put it right in here. So we'll say grid dash column from 1. We want to span it 2 across. So we'll save, and there we go. It spans across. Now the image is kind of up too far. I want to basically center it. So I'm going to add a line dash items to the center. And we'll save that. Now the image is in the center. Okay, so I want to do basically the same thing to the last. So I'm going to copy this whole thing right here and just put a comma, paste that in, and change this to last child so that we can target that, and save, and now you can see we get the same thing. Now, actually, you know what? We need to, right now we're saying start at 1 and span 2. And that's not what we want, because we want it to start here. So we actually want it to start at 2 and span 2. So we're going to have to also just grab this, go down here, and take this and say we want to start at 2 and span 2. So we'll go ahead and save that, and there we go. So now it's put in this place. All right, so that looks pretty good. Last thing, we want to add our background classes and our padding classes. So this should have background dark, this should have background primary, and we also need the padding classes because this right here is just too close to the showcase. Remember, we added the py2 class. So let's go up top, and we're going to add in all the background classes, which we're going to have 3. So let's say bg-dark, and we're going to do a background. We'll use our dark color variable, and let's do a color white. All right, and let's go ahead and just we'll go ahead and copy this down twice. Let's change this to primary and change this to secondary. Okay, and then we'll add our padding classes. So I'm going to do py, let's do class py-1, and for padding for this I'm going to do 1.5 rem top and bottom. Copy this down a couple times. This one will be 2, and then this one will be 3. And we'll change these to 2 and 3. And then I'm going to copy this. And we also want padding classes for all around, which will be P1, P2, and P3. And then we'll just take the 0 away, which will make it padding all the way around. Okay, so those are our padding classes. So let's save that. Now we haven't added the BG color yet. You can see the padding is now there, but let's add our BG color classes, or BG backgrounds. So let's see, we have the first one, which is right here. The second one, I'm going to give a class of bg-dark, save it, and let's see, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? Class bg-dark. Is it because of the card? Dark color, background, bg-dark, article class bg-dark. I'm not sure why that's. Oh wait a minute! I put it on this one. That's the wrong one. It's going to be right here. There we go. Okay, so we have an issue here. The heading is not white, even though we put color white. We have to specifically target the heading, or if there's any links, we also want to set those to white. So actually what I'm going to do is just create a bunch of styles here. We'll do bg-dark, h1, bg-dark. Sorry about the length of this video, guys. We're just doing quite a bit here. Whoops, that should be bg primary. Nope, bg-dark. We're doing let's just do h1, h2, and h3. And I know we only have an h3, but we might use bg-dark somewhere where there's an h1 or an h2 as well. So I'm just trying to make this scalable, basically. And then let's take care of any links. So bg-dark A. And then let's take care of the primary and secondary backgrounds. So I'll paste this in. Let's do primary, paste that in. Secondary, by the way, I'm using Control D to select the next one down. And then we'll just set that to color white and save. And now you can see that the heading is white. So I want this one right here to have the BG primary. So let's go back. So it's the second to last one. So this is the last article. Let's go to the second to last and say bg-primary and save. And there we go. So that looks pretty good. And obviously it's not responsive yet. We're going to get to that probably last, but I think that looks decent. So in the next video, what I want to do is take care of the footer, which we're also going to use the grid in. We're basically going to have 5 items. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th one we're going to span all the way across like that. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. All right, guys, so in the last video, we finished the home article section here. Now we're going to start to work on the footer, which is also going to be a grid container. So let's go below the section here, and we'll just say footer, and let's give it a footer tag with an ID of main-footer. All right, and then inside here we're going to have the container class to move everything to the middle. I'm also going to add a class of footer container here, which will be the actual grid container. And inside here we're going to basically have 5 divs. Okay, if we look at the project here, we're going to set it to repeat for 1FR, so it has 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the next one gets knocked on to the next line. Now this last one here we want to span across all the way. Okay, so we're going to add a grid span as well. So let's add our first div, which is going to have that light logo. So we're going to say image. The source is going to be in the image folder, and it's going to be this logo light.png. Okay, we'll just say news grid. And then underneath that, I'm going to put a paragraph, excuse me, and we'll say, let's do lorem 30. Actually, let's do 20. I think that's what I want. So that's the first div, and the next one is going to be the email newsletter. So let's do an H3 and say email newsletter, and then we're going to do a paragraph. Let's say lorem, we'll do lorem 8, and under the paragraph we're going to have a little form. Oops, we want to get rid of the action. And inside here we're going to have an input. Let's give it a type of email, since this is going to be an email field. We don't need a name and ID. We will put a placeholder. Oops. And we'll say enter email. And then we want a submit button, so I'm going to do an input with the type of submit. And for the value, we'll say subscribe. And let's also give this a class of btn, and I want to do btn and primary. All right, so the next thing we want is the links here. So these site links, which aren't going to go anywhere, but it's just for the aesthetics of the site. So let's say div, and we're going to have an H3 and just say site links, and then a UL. Now this UL I'm going to give a class of list, and I want it to be basically like a utility class so that we can use this in other places as well. And as far as the list items go, we're going to have links to just nowhere. This first one is going to be help and support. Copy this down a couple times, 4 times, and let's do privacy policy. So just some common pages you see on websites. We'll do about us, and this one here, let's do contact. Okay, now the next grid item is going to be a div as well. And this is going to be the join our club. So we're going to do an let's do an H2, and we'll say join our club, and then let's put a paragraph, and we'll do lorem 10, and then under that we'll have an A tag with the class of btn and class of btn secondary. And let's just say in here, we'll say join now. Okay, and then the final div is just going to be a paragraph, and in that paragraph we'll say copyright. Let's do ampersand copy semicolon, which will give us a little copyright symbol. 2019, all rights reserved. All right, so that's all of our HTML. Let's check it out. So it's going to look very, very ugly. So we'll head over to our CSS, and we have some utility classes to create, but we're going to just start on the footer itself first. So let's say footer. We have an ID. We have an ID of main dash footer. Now the footer, I'm going to give the dark color as its background. So var, let's do dash dash dark color, and let's make the actual color, the text, white. Okay, so I'll save that. Now the image is obviously way too big, so let's say main dash image, not main image, main footer, and then target the image. And we want to set the width to, let's do 150 pixels. All right, and I want all the links to be white, so let's say main footer, all the A tags, we want the color to be white. And now we're going to work on the grid and aligning these. We want them to go in, obviously we want to create some columns, so we're going to say main footer, and we're going to grab onto the footer dash container, and we're going to say display grid. And then as far as the grid template columns, we're going to do repeat, and let's repeat 4 times 1 fraction, and let's add a grid gap, spread them apart a little bit, so we'll say 1.5 rem and save, and now you can see that they're all aligned. Now we have some other design to do, styling to do, like this form here, also the list. But this last one here, this copyright, I want this to span all the way across. So I'm going to target that by saying main footer, and let's say we want from the footer container a direct element that is the last child. So even if it wasn't a div, it doesn't matter what kind of element, we're going to target it. And then we're going to set the background to, let's do 444. And if we save that, you can see it's stuck in here, so we want to span it all the way across. And you guys remember how to do that. We're going to do grid dash column, and we want to start at the first column, and then we want to span across 4. Okay, we have 4 total. So we'll save that, and now it spans all the way across. Let's just add a little bit of padding here. We'll say 0.5 rem. Let's also text align to the center. And I want to make the font size just a little smaller, so we're going to do 0.75 rem and save. All right, so let's see, the footer itself, actually, you know what, let's add a padding class to the footer. So up here we'll say class, and remember we have the py, which is top and bottom. We'll do py2 and save. So now this right here, the form, the little email form, I want to style that. So let's target main footer, and let's do footer container, and we're going to grab the input, and I'm going to say I want the input that has the type that is equal to email. Okay, and I'm going to set the width to 90%, and let's set padding, let's say 0.5 rem, and let's do a margin bottom of 0.5 rem. All right, so we'll save that. So that looks pretty good. Now for this button here, I just want to set that width to 90% as well. So remember that main footer, that's an input, and we want to say where the type is equal to submit. And then I just want to set the width to 90%, which didn't work because we need a semicolon. Okay, so that looks pretty good. One thing that I forgot to do is for the paragraphs, I want all paragraphs to have a little bit of margin. You see how this is so close right here and right here. So I'm just going to add, let's go up top here to like our core styles. And let's put in paragraph, and we'll say for the margin top and bottom, we want to do 0.5 rem. So that just adds a little bit of space. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. Let's handle the list. Now, like I said, I want to be able to use the list class in other places as well. So we're going to add this as a utility class. So let's go, let's see, we'll go right under the padding here. And let's say dot list. Actually, we don't need to style the list itself, the UL. Let's just do the LI. And I just want to add padding. We'll say 0.5 rem top and bottom. And let's add a border bottom of 555 dotted 1 pixel. And then I want to set the width to 90% and save. Okay, so that looks pretty good. All right. Oh, you know what? Let's excuse me. Let's do a hover state. Let's make the hover the primary color. So we'll say list. Let's do. Whoops. We want to do dot list LIA hover, and let's say we want the color to be var primary color. And now, okay, that's not working. I'm not sure why that's not working. We've list LIA hover. You know what? Let's add an important flag here. See if that works. All right, there we go. Okay, so that's our list styling, and I think that's it. I think that's it for the footer. So in the next video, we're going to start to work on the inner pages. We have an about page. We also have an article page. So we'll create those, and then we'll start to work on the mobile version for the website. All right, so our homepage is pretty much done aside from the responsive stuff that we're going to do our media queries later on. So we're going to start on the about and the article.html page. So let's open up about.html, and we're going to be using, you know, the nav bar, the footer, that stuff from the index page. So I'm going to copy the whole index page and paste that in about. And then we're going to go up to the top here. Let's change the title here to just about. And let's remove the current. We have a class of current on the link here. We're going to move that to the about page, class current. Okay, we're not going to have a showcase. We can actually get rid of everything in between the nav bar and the footer. So we'll get rid of all that stuff, and if I save and we go to about, we just have the header and the footer. So this is basically your boilerplate for any other page you want to create on this website. A lot of times what I'll do when I'm building something like this is I'll take this and name it like boilerplate.html. That way, if I need to create another page, I have all this. All right, and later on when you get into actual programming, whether it's PHP or Node.js, whatever it may be, if you get into front-end frameworks like React and Vue.js, you're not going to have to copy everything like this. You can have what are called partials, or if you're using a front-end framework, you can have components that you can simply include into your file. That way you don't have to do all this for every single page. All right, now we're going to have a section here. So let's say section, and we're going to give it an ID of about. And then inside here, we're going to have a container. Okay, so it's just going to align everything to the middle. But then we're also going to have a page container, which is going to be our grid container. And this page container we're going to use on any inner pages, so the about and the article.html. And if you wanted to create more pages, we could use this as well. It's going to set it up. It's going to create a grid layout so that we have a main area, and then anything else we add will just be sidebar widgets, basically. So in this page container, let's create our first grid item, which is going to be an article, and we're going to give this a class of card because we want to have that white background with the padding. And then let's do an H1, and I'm going to give this a class of L heading because I want this to be a larger heading than normal. And let's just say about our organization. And then we're going to do, let's do a paragraph, paragraph with lorem 50. And then let's do another paragraph still within the article. And we'll say lorem 100, like that. Now let's do lorem 150. So next thing is going to be an aside. So let's say aside, and this is just going to be that little join our club thing. So I'm going to give this a class of card, but I also want it to be red, or have the primary color. So I'm going to do bg dash primary. I should probably put class in here. So class card and bg primary, and then let's do an h2, and let's say join our club. By the way, I have no idea what the club is. It's just an example of a content widget. So let's put paragraph here. Let's do lorem 10, and underneath that we'll just put an a tag with the class of btn. And let's do a dark button, so we'll do btn. Let's do btn dash dark, and then I also want this to go all the way across its container, so let's add btn block, which I'm about 90% sure we added in the CSS already, but I'm gonna have to check. So let's say join now. Yeah, if we look at style CSS, I just want to make sure that I added this. btn block, yep, so it's going to go 100% across. It's going to be display block. All right, so I think that's it. Let's save this, and basically we just have our content, you know, all on one line here. We want to set this to a grid, and we want to have this be the main part, and then this be in the sidebar, and then anything else we add I want to be in the sidebar as well. So let's go to our style sheet, and there's nothing really we have to add that's specific to the about page, just the page container. So we're gonna go down. Let's put this. I don't want to put it as a utility class. Well, I guess it kind of is a utility because we're going to use it in multiple pages. So yeah, we'll put it right below here, below the list. So let's say page dash container, and I'm just going to put a comment here and say that this is the inner page container or grid container. So let's display grid, and then we're going to do grid dash template dash columns, and the split that I want to use is going to be 5 FR and 2 FR. Okay, and you can experiment with how thin or wide you want the sidebar to be, but I'm going to use that. Now, how this is now with this stretching all the way down, I mean, it's going to do this because it's a 5 FR, 2 FR, and they're going to be the same height. You may want to do this. You may want to add another like piece of content in this same box, but what I want to do is have this be a completely separate box from the next one. All right, so it's up to you how you want to lay it out. You might want to do something like this, but let's go and say we want the page container, and we want the first child, so basically the main article. So I'm just going to say asterisk colon first child, and I want to span this across rows. So I'm going to say grid dash row. We want to start at 1, and then we want to span, let's span 3 and save. Okay, so now it's just going to span down 3, and whatever we put next is going to go right here and then right here. And if you want to have more than 3, then you could increase this span and just have it span as long as you want. All right, so let's this is all very close together, so we're going to add some margin on the main container for the top and bottom. So we'll say 2 rem top and bottom, 0 left and right, and then let's also do a grid gap so we have some space in between the actual grid items. So grid gap is going to be 1.5 rem. And save, and there we go. So now we have our margin top and bottom here. We also have a grid gap. And you'll see that when we create our article page, we're going to have two boxes on the side. So the next thing I add would be right here. Next one would be here. And then after that, it would go down over here because remember, we're only spanning 3. And you could put this to whatever you want. Like if I put it to 6, it'll allow us to have 6 on the side, but I'm just going to use 3 for now. That's fine. Okay, so we have our home page, we have our about page. In the next video, we're going to start to work on our article page. All right, so in the last video, we created our about page and we added the page container, which is going to be the grid that we use for all inner pages. Now, the article.html is going to be pretty similar. We're going to add like a couple extra things in the main article, but the layout will be the same basically. So I'm going to copy the about.html content and go to article.html and paste that in. All right, and then we'll go up to the top here. Let's change the title. We'll just say, for the title, we'll just say latest news, I guess. It doesn't really matter. And then we want to remove the current from the about. So we're not going to have a class of current because the article page is not in the menu. And then for the section, let's give it an ID of article like that. And we're going to keep the page container. We're going to keep the article tag here. And let's see, for the H1. Oh, one thing we didn't do is add the L heading. So let's do that real quick. So that's obviously a utility class. So let's put it, we'll put it right under the padding here. So let's say class L heading, and I believe I did font size 3 rem. Let's see what that looks like. All right, yeah, good. So for the article, we have our heading, which I'm going to change. I'm just going to do lorem 5 for the title. And underneath the H1, we're going to have some metadata. Okay, so an article or a blog post usually will have things like the author, the date, stuff like that. So we're going to create a class, a div with the class of meta. And inside meta, I'm going to put a small tag. Okay, I don't know if we went over small tags. Basically, it's an inline element that will make the text smaller by default. Okay, I forget what the percentage is, but it makes it a little smaller. And then in here, I'm gonna put an icon of a user. Let me just make sure we used font awesome up here. Yes, we did. So let's say I with the class of FAS dot FA-user, and the reason I want this icon is because I'm putting the author's name, so it's just a little icon next to the author name. We're going to say written, let's say written by John Doe, and then we'll just put the date, and we'll just say like January 12th, 2019. Okay, so that's in the small tag, and then we want to have a div with the class of category because we want to put the category here as well. And this is, we're going to say an entertainment article, so we have a class of category -ent. And let's say entertainment. And then let's see, under that, we can just keep the same text, but one thing that we do need is an image. So I'm going to put the image above the H1 actually. So we'll do image. Let's point to image/articles, and we'll use ent1 since this is an entertainment article, and that should be good. Let's see, let's save it and let's see what it looks like. So if I go to the home page, I have all of these pointing to article.html, and that's what it's going to look like. And we're going to style this meta a little bit. But I also want to add an extra box on the side here, or right here up above, which will be a list of categories. So let's scroll down here to where we have our aside, which is the join our club. And I'm going to change the color for this page. We'll say secondary. That's what's good about having these utility classes, is you can easily change things around the site. And then you have variables in the CSS file, which makes it easy to change the values. Now I'm going to go right above this, and let's create another aside. And this aside is also going to have an ID of categories, but let's give it a class of card. And we'll put an H2 in here, and we'll say categories. And under the H2 we'll have a UL, and we're going to use our list class. Okay, and we'll do an LI, and let's just put a link that goes nowhere. And we're going to have this, we're going to put little chevron icons next to each one. So let's use Font Awesome here. We'll do i.fas, and the icon is fa-chevron-right. Like that, and then let's put a space after it, and then we'll put sports. Okay, and then I'm going to grab this and just copy it down. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4 more, and we'll change this one. Let's see, we have sports, entertainment, let's do technology, fashion, and I don't know, shopping. It doesn't matter. Okay, so we'll save that, and there we go. It automatically gets put in the sidebar. So the grid is pretty powerful. We just add display grid, add a couple grid template columns, maybe some spans, and we have our layout for all of our inner pages without having to do floats or anything like that. Now I just want to style this meta area because it doesn't look very good. It's very squished together. And I also want to give it like a look of texture, so we'll add a background color to it as well. So let's go into our style sheet here, and let's go down. We're targeting something that's on a specific page now, so I'm going to go under Home Articles right above the footer, and let's say the ID of article, and then we want the class of meta. So I'm actually going to use Flex for this. This is definitely something that you would use Flex for, and you can see the difference between using grid and Flex. Like the grid is good for this type of thing, the layout of all the boxes and stuff, and then Flex is good for inner elements, aligning stuff like this or menus, and just more simple stuff that's one-dimensional. So let's say display Flex, and you could use the grid for this, but I think it's stupid to use the grid for this. And then we're gonna let's justify our content, and we want to do space between. Okay, I want the category to be over to the right, because if we look at the markup in the meta, we have this is now a flex box, right? And then the small tag is going to be one flex item. This is another, and we want space in between the two, so it pushes the category over. And then let's do a line items center as well, and then we'll do a background. I'm going to do a background of EEE and just add some padding, so 0.5 rem. And let's save that, take a look. Good. Now this, even though we align center, this category, I want to push it down just a little bit. So let's do article dot meta category, and say margin top, let's do 0.4 rem. And that just pushes it down a little bit into the middle. Okay, so I think that's it, guys. Our site is complete except for the responsiveness of it. If we bring this down to mobile size, you'll see that things don't look very well. So we're going to have to just add some media queries and make this look good. All right, so we'll start doing that in the next video.